So a movie every single day for this whole next year. This is the challenge. As you can see behind me, I have my Machina poster. This is the movie I started off with for today. I wanted to start this series off with a great movie that I know is a good movie, and especially one that's relevant right now, with all the things happening with OpenAI and everything like that. It's an extremely relevant movie, and I think, in a lot of ways it was ahead of its time. I think we've been making AI movies for 30, 40 years now. But I think as far as visual effects go, this movie was definitely ahead of its time. They're incredible, and they still are incredible today. And, it's almost 10 years later from the release of this movie. So, I think one of the great things that this movie demonstrates is how you can make an impactful and great movie with such a small budget. This was only $15 million, and it's kind of funny. It feels like I'm talking about an art piece on the wall here, but this movie is an art piece, and I really think with a small budget like this demonstrates that you don't need a huge budget to make a great film, especially one with visual effects and that is relevant with technology and AI. I think that's extremely intimidating to a lot of young filmmakers to get into sort of this technology and AI filmmaking and sci-fi. I think a lot of them think that, me included, think that you need to have a big budget. It's got to be like the Marvel size budget or something ridiculous to pull things off like Ex Machina, but no, not really. I think you just need to find the talent and have the vision, and you can use very minimal resources to make very appealing visual effects. And this movie is a great demonstration of that. And as well, I'm drinking my coffee here. Every single, review, I'm gonna be making a coffee, and you got to start the day with the coffee. If you don't start the day with the coffee, I don't know what you're doing, but I got to start my day with the coffee, and I think it's just it really helps. So another thing too is I'm up pretty early for these videos, so I definitely want to make or be really quiet when I make these, because I have neighbors. I live in an apartment, and I wouldn't want to wake anyone up, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to get a little passionate, because with movies like this and movies in general, it's one of my biggest passions. So it's just something to keep in mind, and hopefully I remember that. And just to touch on that again, I think that maybe even with less of a budget, this movie could have even been made. It comes down to, yes, like having the actors that they have in this movie really helps, but with great writing, you can make, and of course it's shot well, but I think the writing really shines here. For me, stories first, right? Like, the movie can look incredible, technically speaking, but if the story is not well written and well made, it's not going to appeal, to me or to a lot of people, I think. And I think, as we're now in 2024, I think that a lot of people are becoming a lot more aware of great stories, and, they're really hungry for great stories. And this last year, we actually had a pretty good year for cinema, which is awesome. I think we had a rough patch of years there before last year where we didn't have much that, it didn't seem like there was much, at least at the, grand scale coming out movie-wise, that was really good. But I think this last year there were some great movies that came out, and hopefully this next year we'll also see that again. But I think that you gotta have, great writing in your story, in your movie. Just look at every classic, look at every great movie that people call great. Like, the number one thing that you'll see is the writing, right? Like, I'm sure they'll be advanced in some way, you know, Citizen Kane advanced for the way that they shot some of those shots in the cinematography, but, you know, even that movie, the story is really what shines. You know, the story is great in that movie, and it's the story first, and then everything else should hopefully emphasize and elevate that story. And this movie does a great job of that. And, you know, I think that's tough because that just means writing is first, and writing is really hard. You know, me personally, I've been trying to write different movies for years now, and I think that it's, you know, dialogue is really tough. It's one of the hardest things, and that's what they'll tell you if you go through film school or talk to, you know, people in the industry. Writing is really, you know, one of the hardest things to pull off and make believable. But it's just really the heart of the film is the writing, and the writing comes first, and everything else comes after, and they base it all off the story and how it's written. And yeah, I think that, you know, if you can focus on your screenplay and make it the best as possible, and to make it a good story, it doesn't have to be something crazy. You know, we're not all Christopher Nolan. You know, we don't have to go for the most ambitious movie out there. I think if you can just make something simple and that, you know, is a good story that will connect with people, that's really a great starting point. And, you know, I want to talk. I really think that, you know, I need to take that own advice for my own writing. But yeah, I think, you know, story comes first, and this movie has a great story, and you don't need a huge budget to make great movies. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes here. So, Ex Machina. Like I said, one of my favorite movies ever, probably my favorite, you know, AI movie. Not my favorite sci-fi, but I'll get into that, I'm sure, in this year with all these movie reviews. But, you know, one of my favorite movies ever. Highly recommend it. It's on HBO Max right now, so if you have that, go ahead and watch it. It's, you know, not long. You know, this movie's only, I think, an hour and 40 minutes, maybe a little longer than that. And yeah, it's very digestible, very easy to follow. It does get complicated as the story progresses, but it's a great movie. I think from start to finish, you'll be entertained, and it's such a relevant movie right now, and I think for the next few years and maybe the next like decade or two, it's really going to be relevant. You know, with the Turing test is what is talked about and focused on in this movie. You know, that's a little outdated, but just the whole interaction with humans with AI is very relevant, and you see just a great representation of that in this film. Yeah, so this movie stars Alicia Vikander. I might be butchering that. I apologize. Oscar Isaac, of course, you know, he's been in the recent Star Wars movies and quite a few movies, actually, kind of blown up, actually, since this role. And then also Dom Gleeson, might be butchering that as well. Domhnall Gleeson. Wow. Domhnall Gleeson. Apologize, Domhnall Gleeson, if you somehow happen to be watching this. But yeah, so it stars a great cast, and you know, it's also written and directed by Alex Garland, who also did Annihilation after this movie. Did 28 Days Later, which I haven't seen, so it'll be on the list to watch. I haven't seen Annihilation either. That'll also be on the list. And then he has a new movie coming out this year called Civil War. So it's actually a great time to watch this movie and get into his filmography as this new movie comes out. And as I sort of mentioned in the beginning of this video, this did win an Academy Award for visual effects. So that's what I was talking about in the beginning of the video. You know, they used a $15 million budget to win an Academy Award for visual effects. That's extremely impressive, and the movie is extremely impressive. And yeah, so, you know, we're gonna get into the acting here. You know, I really think Oscar Isaac does the best here. They all do a great. They all have great performances, but Oscar Isaac really takes it away. He's just it. He embodies that, billionaire, sort of self-centered, egotistical guy, just so well. Never breaks character. Just, the character's also somewhat of an alcoholic too, and he just, you see sort of a range in this movie, and he's really the only one that has a range. Obviously, with one being an AI, or debatable being an AI, and yeah. So he really is the one with the range here, and he shows it and does a great job. Gleason also does a good job. I think he nails his role as well. But you really, like, that's what, I haven't seen this movie in a few years, and I still remember his performance from this movie because it's the most memorable one. He just does a really good job of playing the character that he was given. Yeah, so there was a extremely important scene in the movie with the Jackson Pollock painting. At least I found it to be, at least to me, one of the most important moments in the movie. They talked about this idea, basically, Gleason's character, Caleb, he wants to be, he's looking for very direct answers, very, how was this machine programmed? He's thinking from that sort of perspective, looking for, just trying to figure it out logically. And I think with their conversation around this painting, Oscar Isaac's character, he really tries to emphasize that that's not the way to go about looking at this experiment that, Caleb's there to experience with Ava. It's more based off of feel rather than rationality. And I think it's an extremely interesting idea. And I also found that the cinematography was the opposite of that, which I thought was interesting. It seemed that every single shot obviously had a plan. The whole story was just there. Every shot served a purpose, which just is a huge telling sign of a great film. Because you'll watch movies and there will be some shots in there that you're just like, why, what is the point of this? Or maybe you don't think about it at all. And, but with this film, if you go shot by shot, every single shot in this film has a purpose. And so it's very interesting to see that compare that to the story's themes, and how Garland made the movie. And it's very digestible because he made it this way. I think if you were to throw on some shots that didn't necessarily have a purpose, it would be, I don't know if it would work as well, right? But it's just interesting because it opposes the theme that I was talking about in the movie, where it's very direct. So maybe we're seeing a lot of the movie from Caleb's perspective in that way, and I think we are. And so that could be the way that he shot the film. And then, of course, the soundtrack, the score is just phenomenal. It's so, it's haunting, but it's also beautiful. And, I think those scores are really hard to pull off. And they pull it off in this one. And it makes a lot of sense. You're creating AI. You're creating, basically a human AI, and that's a beautiful creation that's also terrifying. And so the soundtrack here just embodies that perfectly, and it goes with the pacing of the film too, right? Like, a lot of the beginning of the film is actually silent. There's not much soundtrack, but once you get into, maybe the 40th minute or so, or halfway through the film, the soundtrack really starts to come into the movie and be a huge part of the film, and really takes over towards the end of the film. And they do an excellent job with that, just as far as placement and the pacing of the film. I think it's perfect. I really wouldn't change anything else around. And yeah, so that's sort of a general overview of the main elements, right? The acting, the cinematography, the soundtrack, the writing, the whole story, the movie as well. The story of the movie, sorry. That just covers that. And that's sort of the general overview. So now, looking at the film where we can dive deep into spoilers now. And so, excuse me. And I think I'm going to start right at the end. So, this movie is so close to being perfect for me. Like, it might be one of the closest movies that I've seen to being perfect. And I think a perfect movie doesn't exist, right? I think that no movie is perfect. I honestly don't think you could sit with another person and both agree that, maybe you could with one other person, but maybe a group of people, this is better. Like, you sit with a group of people and you could all agree that one film is flawless, absolutely perfect. Every shot was perfect. The whole story was perfect. You wouldn't change a single thing. Like, I think that's impossible. Like, there's just no way. Like, maybe you and one other person could do that, and you could both agree on a perfect film. But for me, I think it's impossible, and this movie is very close to achieving it, in my opinion. I think there's a lot that I wouldn't replace. Almost all of the movie, I think, is perfect. It is. There's a good reason that it's all there. But I think the ending where, Ava escapes and gets out and basically fulfills the theory that Gleason was talking about earlier in the movie. And so technically, if you go by that theory, she is human. But that's beside the point. She gets out, and then that helicopter shows up, and the guy takes her into society, basically, as the end of the film. Why? It didn't make a lot of sense to me that, why is this helicopter pilot taking Ava to society? When he first dropped off Caleb, and you logically you would think that this pilot would be wondering about Caleb, since that was the whole reason he brought him out there. But maybe there's a theory about this wasn't an experiment on Caleb, it was an experiment on Ava, and there was some sort of outside things going on, or outside dealings about Ava. Maybe someone else knew, and the pilot was a part of that, and took Ava out at the end, and it was really Ava's whole experiment, which in a large part it was, but I just think that was a weak part of the film. That I'm really stretching for theories here right now. Like, if you just look at it at surface level, like, he dropped Caleb off in the beginning of the movie, right? Like, he comes in at the end. This is a small detail, but I think it's important. He comes in at the end and picks up Ava, doesn't ask any questions. Caleb and Oscar Isaac's character, Oscar Isaac's character's dead. Like, he's dead in there, and Caleb is trapped. And so, it'd make me think that the pilot would be alarmed that Ava came out of there, and he's picking up Ava. But no, he just picks her up, and he's like, oh, I guess this is how it was supposed to be. I'm going to take this AI human back into society, or into society, sorry, for the first time. But I think it's just a weak part. It seems like a writing flaw, right? Like, he had the ending in mind, obviously, and he wanted to get to that ending and keep this shorter runtime, not drag things out, not ruin the pacing, which I totally get. But I want that helicopter scene explained. Maybe some of you guys know, and you can comment down below. But I think that, I don't know, it just didn't make a lot of sense. But the ending is great, right? Like, he wants to end it, like Inception, where you don't know if he's in his reality or, you know, or if he isn't. And we don't know if AI or if Ava is an AI or a human or if she passed the test, right? And, you know, he ends it with her going into society, basically becoming a human now. And, you know, maybe the movie isn't all about that either, right? Like, maybe the movie is just about, you know, this is going to happen, right? Like, the AI will become a part of a society and so advanced as much as Ava, even maybe more so, right? And they're going to be a part of everyday society. And this is just a movie telling us that. And I think a large part of it is. But if you want to just break it down to what I was saying in the ending, yeah, you can have your opinion. And, you know, I think Ava is, she is very much AI, but also, you know, could pull off being a human. I think that's the way I look at it, right? So, yeah, that's basically my big flaw with the movie is that ending. But other than that, this movie is perfect. I mentioned the Pollock scene, one of my favorite scenes of the movie. Very interesting ideas there, and I could spend hours talking about that idea, but you know, I won't. And it's just a great thing to think about. Like, you know, if you're going about solving some huge problem, or, you know, creating something like AI, and, you know, I think initially, right, you're going to be extremely logical, extremely rational, but there's sort of the dash of feeling that you want to have in there as well. And I think that they really touch on that in that scene. And yeah, so other than that, you know, it's just a phenomenal movie, extremely relevant to today. And, you know, every technical aspect in this movie is perfect. And yeah, so it's worth a rewatch with all the innovation in AI right now. I know it's so much, like, at least so much of the first half seems to be about like the Turing test, right? And we're well past that at this point, I think. But I think that it's so much more than that. It's more about how Caleb interacts with this AI. And, you know, just basically a huge foreshadowing of what is to come with AI. And I think if you take that sort of lens and perspective, it can be extremely relevant to what is here and what is coming. And one of the things, speaking of foreshadowing, that I wanted to mention is, you know, this is like my 5th or 6th time watching this film, and, you know, there is so much foreshadowing. You know, I didn't realize just how much foreshadowing there was, and the way it's edited is just, it's all setting up for the ending. And it's, you know, I think when you watch it like so many times now, it's pretty obvious, the foreshadowing, and it seems a little simple, a little basic, but I think on a first viewing, it works quite well. And you probably won't pick up on all of the foreshadowing. You'll pick up on a good amount because it's not extremely sophisticated, but there is a good amount of foreshadowing, and I think I think on a first watch, it works really well. And the chess match between Caleb and Nathan, I keep saying Oscar Isaac because I forgot his character's name, but it's Nathan. This is just an awesome, you know, mental battle between the two. And they talk, you know, Caleb talks a lot about chess at one point in the movie, and basically how to read an AI. And, you know, they're trying to read each other the whole movie. More Caleb than Nathan, but yeah, and I think the last thing that I will say on this movie, I think that, when you talk about a perfect movie, at least for me, it has to combine genres, It can't just be one genre. I mean, I guess you could have like a perfect, film noir or perfect Western or something like that. But, as far as like a completely whole movie, I think for me it has to involve some multiple genres, and this movie has like especially one funny part, right, with the dancing scene, and it it really it combines that drama, it combines a little comedy in there, which is you don't expect when you're first watching it, and then it's more of a thought-provoking film, a sci-fi, but also a thriller. It combines these three genres, and I think it does it very well. And yeah, it makes for a great movie. So if you want to read my full written review, that will be right here on Letterboxd. Make sure you go check it out. And comment down below what movies you'd like to see me review next. I'm doing 365 movies, so I have plenty of room for recommendations, and I'm planning on basically focusing on like a different genre every single day, right? So this was sort of sci-fi. Tomorrow will be romance or something like that, and I'll be picking random movies, but also taking recommendations. So feel free to comment down below. Hope you guys enjoyed this. It's a new format, it's a new style. I'm trying it out. We're gonna see what works, and it's gonna get better every day. So definitely check out Ex Machina, one of my favorite movies of all time, really. So worth a watch. Very relevant today on AI. And just remember, it's all just art, dude. And I will see you all tomorrow.